Before I start on part 2, I wanted to quickly address a few recurring comments that I got on part 1. The first comment that I got a few of was, hey, this video would be better if it had a script. And yep, yeah, you're objectively correct. I script my smaller stuff, and I did originally plan to script this, but it was just so long that I was like, this would be an insane amount of, additional work. And A, it would be enough work that I'm probably never actually going to do it. So I chose an imperfect video over a non-existent video. And B, even if I did actually get around to doing it, the thing about me is that I'm mortal. I only have a limited amount of time to be alive, and I don't actually want to devote that much of it to Vivziepop. There are so many other things I could do with all that time. So I just was like, whatever, I'll just go for it. And it seems to have worked out okay. I'm not totally spinning it off the dome. I do have a list of key points in order. And originally in the first video, I had a segment explaining that and apologizing for it. But then I was like, wait, I don't want to say that this video isn't good at the start of the video because then people will leave. So I cut it. But if you made it through 5 minutes of that video and you were like, Jesus Christ, shut the f*** up, I totally get that. That's how I feel upon editing the audio. So I'm surprised that so many people were like, no, this is actually really engaging. It's very nice, but I was surprised. As much of a YouTube cliche as it is, the reception has been pretty cool. So thank you for that. And the second comment that I got a few of was, no, the bathtub snakes drawing is a problem because the character in the bathtub is 17, which is a minor. And maybe this is the take that's gonna get me canceled, and in that case it's been great knowing you, but I don't really care. I still can't bring myself to care. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to white knight for Viv here. The bathtub snakes drawing is weird and cringe. Make no mistake, if I found out that one of my friends had drawn that, I would rag on them for months. And I would expect any of my friends to do the same. But the vibe would be like, bro, remember when you drew those bathtub snakes? That was pretty embarrassing. Not how could you do that? If Vivziepop kidnapped a real 17-year-old and stripped them naked and threw them in a bathtub full of snakes, okay, now we're getting somewhere. But I just don't really see what's so morally reprehensible about it. And it's not as if, oh, well, that's not real, is a complete catch-all getaway excuse for, any portrayal of anything. The media we consume does impact us, and portraying certain things in certain ways can absolutely be harmful. But I don't think that the bathtub snakes drawing clears that bar. What it comes down to is I can't imagine any reasonably plausible scenario in which this drawing could get somebody in real life hurt. I really don't think that any 17-year-old is gonna come across that and be like, oh, it's okay to have sex with snakes. Or that any snake is gonna come across that and be like, sss, which means it's okay to have sex with 17-year-olds. And if they did, there was something else wrong with that guy. You know that famous French painting of a pipe that's called This Is Not a Pipe? The thing being like, oh, it's not a pipe, it's a painting of a pipe. Ooh, surrealism. That's how I feel about this. That's not a 17-year-old in a bathtub full of snakes. That's a drawing. And I think that probably the only person that has ever been at all harmed because of this drawing is Medrano herself, because she has to grapple with the immortalized cringe of her youth. And the third comment that I got multiple times was, oh, well, is it still okay to like Hazbin or helluva? And yes, yeah, absolutely it is. I didn't address that in the first video because it genuinely just never even occurred to me. And even if it had, I'm not the boss of you. But yes, of course you can still like Hazbin Hotel or helluva. Absolutely. I think that Vivian Medrano sucks as a person. And I think that Hazbin Hotel, the series, and helluva Season 2 suck as media. But that's in no way causative. I think that Helluva Boss Season 1 slaps harder than Basilica Matsuki. Honestly, the bottom line is, you should take joy where you can get it. And if you find joy in Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, then that's great. And you should keep on doing so. This is the part of the series that's about SpindleHorse. So, a couple of weeks ago, I got a comment on my last video saying, oh, you did some analysis of the people that worked on the pilot versus the show. Do you want to see the spreadsheet I made a few weeks ago of the animators that worked on Helluva Boss? And I was like, oh, fantastic, absolutely. Because I had actually, when I was originally recording this, I had lamented that I wished somebody would make one of those. I would love to see, I'm not going to do it, I don't have the time, but I would love to see somebody go through all of the SpindleHorse employees and see which ones have stayed and how long they've stayed. So I get this comment, and I'm like, yes, absolutely, shoot me an email. And they do. This person goes by garbage data, and their Mastodon account is anomalocarididae@furry.engineer. And I don't know exactly what I expected to get from this, but my expectations were greatly surpassed. It is this beautiful spreadsheet, filterable, sortable, it has different tabs for the different roles, it even has the outsourced animation, which, this is off topic, but if you've outsourced your animation to like a regular studio, that isn't an indie production anymore. I feel like that's common sense, but apparently it's not. They even have timestamps to where these people are in the credits. It's a very comprehensive document. The only things that were missing from this were that it didn't include what was at the time the latest short, and that the data had not been analyzed. So basically, all of the tedious grunt work had been done, and then I got to do the interesting part in analyzing it. I'm not going to verbally go over a bunch of this data because that was honestly the most tedious part of the last video. But I will be linking this in the description so that you can check it out for yourself if you want to. And what I'm going to talk about is one specific point of data, the turnover rate. So, I calculated turnover rate, what percentage of staff left each episode. And as you can see if you look on the screen, the data is very scattered, lots of highs and lows. Not the best set in the world for a mean and a median, but that's the metric we have, so it's fine. It'll all even out in the wash, I guess. We're looking at a mean turnover rate. The way I said that makes it sound like mean, like he can make a mean cocktail. Anyway, we're looking at a mean turnover rate of 9.24% and a median turnover rate of 9.93%. And if you're in the same boat as me, your reaction to that was probably, cool, what does that mean? I don't know what a good turnover rate is, like, who am I? So I googled what's a good turnover rate. And, Google said, well, it's very individualized, it's different for every industry and for every company within that industry. As a grand generalization, generally a good turnover rate is about 10%. And I was like, wow, that surprised me, because I did not expect SpindleHorse to have a good turnover rate, but apparently they have kind of an ideal one. And I was like, wow, I guess things are a lot better than I thought. And for a few minutes, I lived in that world. And then it hit me that turnover rate is calculated by year, unless specified otherwise. I was calculating turnover rate by episode, which is obviously completely unique here and not a metric that is comparable to the rest of the world. And y'all, we are looking at a 50% turnover rate. 50, not 15. 50. Half of 100, twice 25, 50. I keep on thinking that I must have somehow screwed up the math because 50% is just so absurdly bad. But no, it's not like it's a complicated formula. I feel like a robot that's malfunctioning. I just want to scream 50% into the microphone for the next 10 minutes. I can't believe that Medrano can still surprise me. I don't even know how to begin to explain how absurdly bad a turnover rate of 50% is. If you go onto a business forum and say, I have a 50% turnover rate, they will throw tomatoes at you. After I'd received the spreadsheet, but before I had finished analyzing it, I recorded a whole section about how we do need to give SpindleHorse a little leeway here because they employ freelance artists, and turnover of freelance workers is not nearly as indicative of employee dissatisfaction as with regular workers. I'm cutting that part. I mean, I just TLDR'd it, but I'm cutting the rest of that for time, because I don't know exactly how much leeway I was ready to give them, but not that much! And that's just the average. I'm not even touching the year from July 30, 2022 to 2023, where turnover was at 69%. Employee turnover is an area in which a 69 is not nice. If 69% of your employees leave your company in 1 year, something is fucking wrong. It doesn't matter whether it's traditional employment or contracting or freelance or any other kind of employment, except for, I guess that would be fine for temp work. It would be okay for literal temp work. Other than that, you do not have to be a business person to understand that if 69% of people leave a company in a year, something is deeply, deeply wrong with that company. I want to take a minute to address a very specific segment of people watching this video. And that is, if you're hate watching this, and right now you're thinking, oh, geez, how can I rationalize this one? Probably not doing that consciously. But just take a moment and genuinely consider, are you subconsciously trying to find a way to spin this where it's not so bad? Are you trying to find a way to fit this new information into your existing worldview instead of considering letting this new information change your existing worldview? And if so, why? Medrano isn't your friend? You don't know her? Unless you do, in which case, can you send me a message and explain what the fuck is wrong with her? Is it because you think that if she's a bad person, you can't enjoy her work? Because that's not true. Is it because you've been defending her for so long that you feel like you have to keep on doing it? Because that's sunk cost fallacy. Is it that you've already made your stance so clear and now you feel like you can't go back on it? You know, like, it'd be embarrassing, you'd feel stupid, you'd think that people would think you're dumb for changing your mind? Because it's not dumb to be willing to change your mind. It's a good thing. And there's no shame in it. At least not for something this relatively minor. If you've spent the last 20 years being an adamant flat earther or something, I guess I understand how you're maybe in a bit more of a pickle there, but this is literally just some random pseudo-famous person on the internet. And I mean, if I can appeal to the basic laziness of the human condition for a second, trying to find a way to bend this kind of sounds like a lot of work and maybe kind of difficult. Wouldn't it be easier to just be like, oh man, yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe she does suck. There's nothing wrong with realizing you've been wrong. If I'm in the wrong here, if there's some sort of big misunderstanding, or if I have somehow messed up the extremely basic math, I'll write a comment explaining it and pin that to the top of the comments section. I also don't mean this in a condescending way. It's a big pet peeve of mine when somebody is like, somebody disagreeing with me, no, they must be lying to themselves. I'm not saying that if you disagree with me, that is you. I'm just asking you to consider it. It is also genuinely completely possible that you're just like, no, I just don't agree. I think that a 50% turnover rate is a-okay. I kind of don't understand how somebody could think that, but I don't understand most things in the universe, so that's fine. Anyway, I'm open sourcing this. I'm gonna put a link to a copy of this spreadsheet in the video description, so you can go look at it and you can make copies of your own, and if you want to figure out some math, you can use it to do that. Or you can just share it with your friends. I'm so dead serious, actually. Share this around. I mean, I like views, I like money, but I also genuinely just want more people to see this. I want this to become more well-known, because if more people know about this, then maybe Medrano won't be in as much of a position as she is to keep on hurting people. You know, I mean, I make jokes, and I have really goofy thumbnails, and I take it lightly, because what the hell else am I supposed to do? Am I gonna burst into tears over every random asshole in the world? If I break down learning about Vivian Medrano, the hell am I gonna do when I find out about, I don't know, factory farming or something? And also because taking the piss is kind of just more fun to record and to listen to. But at the end of the day, this is genuinely kind of serious stuff. This woman is genuinely hurting people. I don't understand how she's gotten away with it for so long. I guess I do, actually, because how would anyone know? There's no way to know unless you were willing to spreadsheet every single artist on the goddamn show, and who wants to do that? I'm making a fucking Chris Chan-ass docuseries on her, and I wasn't even willing to do that. So, massive props to Garbage Data for cracking this one wide open. Medrano really is just go big or go home, you know? It seems as if nothing is ever subtle with her. She's just cartoonishly bad. And then here's the part of the video that had been recorded before I got sent that spreadsheet. It still has some stuff that is worth checking out, I think, obviously, or I wouldn't have made it. But I just wanted that to be at the very beginning. So out with the old, in with the new, you know? Those voice actors are old models. It's like that scene in The Brave Little Toaster. I'm so tired. So let's talk about Viv's new crew. Let's talk about SpindleHorse. SpindleHorse is a wreck. It's a mess. We'll start with the pay. Here is a Discord screenshot of a message from Adam Nealon, who is up top at SpindleHorse, to, I presume it was a copy-pasted message to some or all of SpindleHorse's animators. We're happy to offer you a position as a cleanup artist. We are acting as the outsourced studio and the budget is locked. The new rate will be 35 USD a second for rough animation, with the opportunity to negotiate based on shot complexity depending on what the budget allows. Animation expected of the show is a bit more standard, less intensive, blah blah blah. Then helluva will resume and rates will be 60 USD a second. We get it if you don't want to accept. So, offering jobs for $35 a second. If you're like me, and the vast majority of people, that means nothing to you. Is that a lot? Is that a little? I don't know. Thankfully, there are people that know. Spoiler alert, it's a little. I guess it's about $1.50 per frame. Hand-drawn frame, so I see that's pretty bad. Here's a screenshot. This is silly. I really am sorry for how little I know about this. I tried to get more concrete answers, and I really couldn't. But here's a screenshot from somebody saying that they asked their dad. Their dad is Frank Moliere. He's a pretty well-established guy in animation for quite a while. He was on Osmosis Jones, the SpongeBob movie, the good one, the Simpsons movie, co-directed a Peanuts special. He was a director on Curious George. Whatever. He says it's very little. That's pretty much the best I can give you on that. But more importantly, with relation to this Discord screenshot, we have an article from a news outlet called Passionfruit. I don't know, I'd never heard of it, but this reporter reached out to Adam Nealon about this. Passionfruit, not the New York Times, but it also is credible enough that I don't think that they just straight up made it up. If this article was just completely fabricated, then I am pretty sure he would have, come out on his Twitter or something saying, hey, you guys made that up. Like I said, not the New York Times, but also more trustworthy than, I don't know, someone's Tumblr or whatever. So they reached out to Adam Nealon, and he confirmed that this message is real. And also dug himself even further into a hole. This is mostly what I was referring to when I said that the guy who has leaked a lot of the stuff you're going to see here, we'll get into him in a minute, has also leaked things that turned out to be completely true. They reached out to Adam Nealon and he said it was taken out of context. The job was voluntary. Nobody was being forced into taking less money. It was entirely something where he said, this is what we have to work with, and this is the project we're working on, and if you want to take it, great. If you don't, we understand, and we're willing to work to keep you employed and working on another project. We are always trying to do right by our artists, blah, blah, blah. He denied tight deadlines, or rather he said it's unfair to characterize them as tight deadlines. There are a few things he said in this article. The one that I care most about. According to Nealon, SpindleHorse Toons is a complicated business where animation usually requires 6 different roles. Board artists, character designers, background artists, rough animators, cleanup artists, and compositors, all working in tandem. Some freelance animators who, quote, hold up to their standards and, quote, work at an efficient pace are paid on a higher scale of $1,000 a week to, quote, give them a reason to stay and not wander around someplace else, according to Nealon. Others get the lower rate of $20 per hour. 1 second of animation, according to Nealon, usually averages out to around $20 an hour. I have no idea if that's true, man. I don't know. Sounds about right, sure. So yeah, you heard that right. They pay most of the animators this one thing, which some people argue is peanuts. I honestly am not qualified to know. But they pay most of their animators $20 an hour. Except then a few special guys that they really, really like get paid $1,000 a week. That's crazy. And also, this wasn't leaked information. This just came straight from Nealon's mouth. How fucked up are your business practices that you think that's an acceptable thing to admit? If you're admitting, without being pressured, if you seem to think there is nothing wrong with picking a few favorite people that you pay $1,000 a week, then what are the things you are doing that you are not willing to admit up front and that you do know are wrong? I hope I don't have to explain why that's not acceptable. Even if they were truly the ones doing the best and quickest work, it still wouldn't be acceptable. But also, this is something that is never going to work in practice. The ones that are picked to have the $1,000 a week, I'm sure, end up being, the ones that are closest to the highest steps. Maybe a couple of them genuinely sort of clawed their way up the ladder. Check out this Vivziepop tweet that I stumbled upon just a few minutes ago, actually. Yeah, I think it's worth holding them all accountable. If they can afford some artists higher, they can afford all higher. With the amount of content they put out regularly, I'm scared to know how much they make. It's def a lot. They shouldn't pay some folks livable and others peanuts. Sad face. Yeah, Viv, I agree. You shouldn't pay some folks livable and others peanuts. Fucking pick a few people to pay $1,000. Fucking Neanderthal motherfucker. Passionfruit also cited anonymous former SpindleHorse employees. Obviously that could be fabricated because anonymous, who are you going to check with? I personally believe it. But I'll read them to you and you can make your own decisions. Passionfruit spoke to a dozen current and former employees and contractors, most on the condition of anonymity because they feared retaliation from Medrano or her fanbase. Both of those are quite fair. While some described their experiences as positive and sometimes idyllic, others felt that the studio was disorganized, plagued with very tight deadlines, and offered low but industry average pay. Some freelancers told Passionfruit that work became tighter and more impersonal, but more professional, though disorganization could sometimes lead to workflow problems. Two freelancers who worked on the tail end of the animation process during this period share that they were given broken assets and missing media elements that caused them to crunch to reach deadlines. Many of these artists Passionfruit spoke to started working at SpindleHorse Tunes fresh out of college, working long hours on a passion project, making about $20 a pop. While the studio grew over time to accommodate more animation, Medrano and her lead's lack of experience sometimes allegedly created a difficult work environment that some former employees have been afraid to speak up about. I put my best into this. I really wanted to do my best, but it wasn't enough because nothing would ever be enough for her, one anonymous artist said about working with Medrano. One freelance animator told Passionfruit that they took the $35 because when helluva paused production so that Hazbin Hotel could be finished, they had no time to look for another way of income. But the stress that I went through to finish the shots with such little pay and such little time was not worth it in the end. It's lost its fun indie luster, and is more like the standard big studio experience, except still maintaining mediocre indie pay, another freelancer told Passionfruit. Every freelancer Passionfruit spoke with agreed that the rates were low, but not out of the ordinary for the animation industry, especially on an indie production. Indie animation is not something people get into to make a ton of money, one freelancer said. Main reasons to join are out of passion for the project and want to see it happen without a studio backing it financially, or as a stepping stone to get some experience and portfolio content to work towards a more consistent and steadily paying job in a union-based industry position. Since the pilot of Hazbin Hotel's release, only a handful of those who have worked on Medrano's projects have come forward with their stories publicly on social media. 3 shared their statements as well as new information with Passionfruit in a Dropbox, writing, "The cases of unstable and abusive working conditions under Vivian Medrano have been piling up for years. This serves as an opportunity for those who are victimized to no longer suffer in silence and to finally come forward with their experiences." And though there are artists who have had bad experiences, some freelancers Passionfruit spoke with had a positive time working at SpindleHorse Tunes. Blah, 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 then they say positive things. I don't mean to cut the narrative for malicious reasons. I want to keep us as low on time as we can. Oh, by the way, also in this Passionfruit article, Adam Nealon noted that SpindleHorse does not have a HR person. No shit. Wow, I never could have guessed. The business that upfront admits to picking their favorites to pay $1,000 a week doesn't have somebody in charge of HR? That's weird. They really need somebody. I hope they don't get somebody, because I want to see them keep on making fools of themselves, but they really need somebody. There was also, in my notes, I went into this more, but as I'm making this video, I'm just like, this doesn't meet the credibility threshold for me to take the time to go through it, but there was a shared Google document that gets passed around to freelance animators. It's a spreadsheet where people can note and rate their experiences with different studios, and SpindleHorse is doing very poorly on that. But it's all anonymous. So, I mean, I think probably some of them are real and some of them are fake. But obviously, no way of knowing which ones. In addition to the pay, there's also some weird legal stuff going on with SpindleHorse. Or maybe there isn't, and I just am misunderstanding because I'm not a lawyer. But it's really weird. It's SpindleHorse LLC is registered in California, and there's an address listed for it, and that address has like more than 100 other businesses attributed to it. And according to California business records, it's a gaming company. That's weird. I have no idea. Or maybe it's not. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, I don't know. That's kind of weird. Not really something Viv did wrong, but I'm indulging myself by including it, because what if somebody comments that understands it better? And if we're talking about SpindleHorse, it would be amiss not to mention how they hire. SpindleHorse is constantly calling for new employees on Twitter. I can try and search Twitter, find some calls, and put them up here, but usually they delete them after they are have all the uplinks they want. So I'm not going to properly represent how often it happens, but, well, I mean, if you follow Vivziepop on Twitter, then you know for yourself. And they hire a lot of, since they call on Twitter, they get responses from their fans, which isn't inherently a bad thing. They hire, the vast bulk of people they hire, if I had to guess, is young fans that are either in college or fresh out of college or not even going to school for animation, and a ton of the time it's their first real job. So you can see how that's a employee that's very primed to take advantage of. SpindleHorse is a company that is full of employees that are just rife to exploit. They're fans of the show. Some of them idolize Viv. They're in disbelief that helluva would hire them. And since they think that they're just so lucky to be there in the first place, much easier to take advantage of them. And then, I mean, this is me speculating even more than I already was, but I presume that they probably get burned out, and then they chuck them away, and then they hire new ones, and that's why they are so often calling for jobs on their Twitter. And that's the end of Vivziepop Sucks Eggs Part 2. Subscribe if you want to see Part 3. Like and comment if you want to make me say, "Aw, you shouldn't have."